I just saw Poor Things in theaters, and I can confidently tell you it's one of the weirdest movies of 2023. All right, so according to Google, this is what the plot is. Brought back to life by an unorthodox scientist, a young woman runs off with a lawyer on a whirlwind adventure across the continents. Free from the prejudices of her times, she grows steadfast in her purpose to stand for equality and liberation. I'm not gonna lie, I went into the theater not really understanding what the movie was about. I had this preconceived notion of what it was, and I thought it was really cool, which we'll talk about later. But one interesting thing I thought, even before I got into the actual theater, was that when I was showing the usher the ticket, he carded me. And I have never been carded for a movie in my entire life. Granted, I'm only 21, so not too long of a life, especially not too many years after the age of 17. But I've seen R-rated movies recently, like, I don't know, but I've seen them in theaters and I've never been carded. So it was already a weird experience, but I kind of just assumed that he was new and was just doing everything by the book. Fine. And then I got to the theater and watched the movie. Like I said earlier, I had a very loose understanding of what this movie was about. So based on the trailer, I assumed that it was a Frankenstein modernization about Bella, the main character played by Emma Stone, going out into the world and exploring life for herself after basically being this weird Frankensteinish character. That is what I was expecting the plot to be. I knew that the movie was going to look amazing just because I saw the trailer. I have eyes. Because not many movies have that type of aesthetic. But based on the plot, that's all I thought. In reality, though, the movie wasn't just vaguely about Emma's growth as a person, but a heavy, and I mean heavy focus on the exploitation of her body throughout the movie. This is a great concept for a movie to explore, especially in this unique way set in a Victorian London era. But I did not know this, so I was kind of caught blindly by this. And there were so many explicit scenes where it was shown. I thought when it first happened that it was going to be kind of like an Oppenheimer moment where it was only that one scene in the movie. No. That it was throughout the entire movie, and I was kind of weirded out because in my opinion, I don't think it has to be explicitly shown, but rather implicitly. But thinking about it now, I can understand why it was like that. I just wasn't expecting it at the time. But that was not the only surprise the movie had for me, because there was a plot twist very early on within the first 30 minutes or so that really made me uncomfortable, but we'll touch back on that later. One thing I did wish for from the movie was showing more of her morality as an individual rather than her trying to break out of other people's morality being forced onto her, if that makes sense. Like, I wish there was some sort of situations where she had to choose between like two really tough decisions, kind of like in certain movies where the character has to choose between like their dream job or their like dream school or whatever. This is very rudimentary. I don't mean that specifically, but kind of a decision like that kind of strayed away from the whole exploitation, because at least for me, I can understand that this is what the movie was about, but I wish they just branched out a little more sometimes. But that's not to say the movie was devoid of morality, because it was heavily featured once she was on a boat ride towards Paris, I think, something like that, or Athens, one of those European places. But they essentially introduced differing philosophies onto her, and that's when she really broke out and learned more about what there is to the world other than being exploited, essentially. And I think this is a very important turning part in Bella's character, because she doesn't exactly realize that she was being exploited. She was just kind of going through the motions and looking for as much fun as possible. But now that she met these people, they introduce differing philosophies from her that have just been forced onto her. Also, later on, she does begin to develop more of a philosophical mind, I guess you could say. There was this one moment while she's working at a brothel, she wants to reform it so that her and the other people working there have more choice over their bodies and the clients that they choose. Ultimately, it didn't work out because the owner of the brothel basically convinced her that that's not a good idea and that she should roll with the punches, even though she doesn't want to. But the fact that she had that idea and tried to reform the place in general, it shows tremendous growth in the character. And I talked about those scenes specifically to show that there were moral complexities in the movie for sure. It's just that in addition to these scenes, I would have liked to see some more diversity in the moral, I guess, quarrels of the character from more of a personal level. Now, while I did like those two scenes and how it shows the character, there were plenty of scenes in this movie that made me genuinely so uncomfortable. The first one was the apple scene. For anyone who's seen the movie, the apple scene was just really weird to me, and that was the most tame. The next scene that really, or a collection of scenes that made me uncomfortable, was the amount of just physical scenes between Bella and the lawyer that initially shows her the world. I understand, like I said, it's part of the story, but there were a lot. I did not feel like I had to watch like 6 different scenes like that. And this is like all before the midway point of the movie. I just wanted to point that out. Now, this is kind of in the same vein as her and the lawyer, but when she was working at the brothel, oh my gosh, there was this one scene where this man was, he just looked like a regular client, I guess, but he brought his 2 kids who were definitely under the age of 18. He had them watch him and her so they could learn, I guess, but I really thought it was weird. Maybe this was something that went on or still does, I don't know. But that was really weird to see. I don't remember if their clothes were on or whatnot, but looking back, I really hope it was, because like that did not have to be there at all. And also the crab man, the crab man, that's all I'm gonna say, the crab man. And the plot twist, man, when it was revealed like 30 minutes into the movie, I honestly wished I just didn't go see the movie, because the whole premise is that Bella undergoes some like injury in the trailer. She falls off a bridge, essentially, like she jumps off, and then Willem Dafoe, he's playing this like world-renowned surgeon in London, and he essentially animates her back by like Frankenstein-esque stuff with like zapping her with electricity. That's where I got the Frankenstein comparison, right? So I assumed that she was basically just like a Frankenstein character. No, I wish, because what really happened is she jumped while she was pregnant. That's tragic, but that's what happened. She decided that her life and the baby's life would be better not continuing. But Willem Dafoe's character, Dr. Godwin, he ends up finding her randomly by chance, or as he says, fate, brings her back to his laboratory, finds that she's basically on the brink of death, and he felt like he shouldn't revive her because that would be like he'd be playing with fate at that point, and he didn't feel like he had the right to do that. I guess, whatever, you're a doctor, but whatever, fine. So instead, his grand idea was to take the brain of the fetus and put it into the dead mother's body and reanimate it. And he didn't want to play with fate, huh? I didn't even consider that to be an option in the movie. Even with how weird it was within the first 30 minutes, there was not a single time when I thought, hey, maybe this could happen. But it did. Like, how do you even think about that? And then how do you think about that and be like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let me write this into the movie. Like, after thinking about it, I understand only 40% of that decision. I almost see it, because it's like she has to grow up as the daughter and the mother at the same time. She's learning life for the first time, just like any daughter would, but she also has to make the tough decisions and guide herself on the right path like a mother would do to a daughter. So therefore, she acts as the mother and the daughter of her own self. I see, but that, like, why? That's so weird. Like I get the premise of it, but the execution was so weird. I've regretted buying my movie ticket. But what's even crazier is that even after all the stuff that I just said, it was a phenomenal movie. The cinematography alone justifies seeing it. There's no modern movie that looks remotely anything close to it. It has its own unique style. I love film. I want to do cinematography at some point, but I just don't remember everything that was in it. I do remember in the beginning of the movie, it was in black and white because it signified Bella Baxter's kind of like gray look on life because she doesn't know what it is, essentially. At least that's how I interpret it. And then it turns into color once she begins to explore the world with the lawyer. Also, there was this extreme anamorphic bokeh with radial distortion during some scenes. Usually it was on a close-up of a character and they'd be the only one in frame, and it looked amazing. I want to recreate that at some point. It looks great. And also there was a lot of unique usage of push and zooms, which was pretty cool. It kind of made it its own type of style. The push and zooms kind of reminded me of Wes Anderson, which I will make a video about at some point. And even though I have so many things to say about how weird the story was, it doesn't take away how good it was. Such a bold movie. Not many people would even begin to make the decisions that the director and the producers did with this. And I do believe Emma Stone was a producer in this as well. So that was kind of interesting to see. At least, I don't know what other things she's produced, but this is the first thing that I've seen that she was part of a production, and it is really bold. It is really bold. There's just so many decisions. I probably wouldn't have made them personally, but they were bold. I will say that. And also there was just such a clear, I don't want to say linear, but it was clear when Bella was having these moments of growth, which is pretty amazing because you don't know what mental age she is. You just know that she's growing. And I feel like certain events in the movie have a very clear correlation to a turning point in her life. And also an underrated aspect of this film is that every character has a purpose in relation to Bella. And honestly, I don't want to explain each of them because I'm already going on to like 15 minutes or whatever here. So just watch the movie. But all in all, this was an amazing movie. I will say, I don't want to say generational, but it is definitely extremely unique for its time. Even in 2024, 2023, whenever you see it, there's just not many movies pushing the boundaries like this. And as much as I do want to watch it again, I don't know if I will, just because of all the weird things, but just maybe I might now that I know that it's coming and that it's expected.